Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome back into the Vandy247 podcast. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, and today we are continuing the Vanderbilt basketball talk. We're going to be joined by Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated and the Field of 68 here in just a few moments. But first, I want to tell you about the Wash House. They present our basketball coverage, which we'll be talking about all show today. If you're dreading laundry day and stealing time, and if it's stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy, well, let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 locations in Nashville. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Well, the Commodores take a loss to Arkansas last night, 90-77, late last night, ended around midnight. I saw the post-game coverage that we had last night, and we'll continue the Commodore basketball talk here with Kevin Sweeney right now from Sports Illustrated and the Field of 68. Kevin, appreciate you hopping on. How you doing?
What's going on, man? Good time of year.
Absolutely. We are March 5th now, and SEC tournament coming up here in Nashville, which I know a lot of people are excited about, and then the NCAA tournament as well. But I figured I'd get you on. I've seen your tweets about the Byington era here in Nashville, and even when he was hired, a lot of people, whether it was around the country or at Field of 68, had all but positive things to say about Byington when he was hired. I want to go back to that. Like when Vanderbilt, I know we're now into the season, we've got a lot of talk about in season, but when he was hired at Vanderbilt, what was your initial takeaway?
Yeah, man, I loved it from the perspective that he's a guy that has won different ways. He's a guy who's won at hard jobs. Like, to me, Mark Byington for a long time. And obviously, look, the 32-win year and an NCAA tournament win, all those things sort of validated it and gave him the resume that all of a sudden, warranted him getting an SEC level job. But like, I've always looked back and like the job he did at Georgia Southern was ridiculous. Like, that's a hard place to win. He built a consistent winner, and then he goes to JMU and, digs that program really from the dirt. And here we go, like winning the league, 30-win season. Like, obviously, again, sometimes it just takes that run to really sell ADs and search firms that your guy's better than the rest. But I felt for a long time like he was someone that was worthy of a level up, and in a lot of ways a great fit for Vanderbilt because he understood how to win at difficult places, understood how to build energy around a program. His work early on has certainly validated that.
Yeah, and he obviously brings in an entire new roster led by Jason Edwards from North Texas, who ironically was a guy before they got him. I was looking at the portal guys that are still available, and I said, "Here's Jason Edwards." He was just about the best available guy. Vanderbilt ends up getting him, and then you talk about AJ Hoggard and some Virginia Tech guys like Tyler Nickel and MJ Collins, Jalen Carey from James Madison. I can't believe the chemistry that they have this season. Now, I know they took a loss last night, but for them to be on the borderline of being ranked right now, that's what surprises me most, Kevin, that as quickly as they possibly could, they got this team, cobbled this team together, and they played to their strengths. They played a Byington style, and I that's what surprises me most. I don't know if there's something else that surprises you about it, but to me, to get them playing with chemistry is just so impressive.
Yeah, look, I think when you think about a lot of the other really good first year coaching jobs, a lot of it tends to be driven by, oh, what could you bring with you from your previous spot? Whether that's
Right.
at the mid-major level with, what Ben McCollum's done at Drake, or, even high major with what, Vlad Golden has helped Dusty May do at Michigan. Like, obviously Jalen Carey's a big part of this team, and they've needed him because of the lack of size. But, for him for Byington to go out and have to build an entirely new team from scratch and find pieces that fit, find pieces that could play a unique style, find pieces that could buy into, playing fewer minutes, right? Obviously, one of the big things that Byington's always done is spread the minutes around quite a lot. That's really impressive. And to get all these guys that a lot of them are in their last or second to last, go rounds in college basketball. Like, for all those guys to buy in and say, hey, like, I can be part of something bigger and help Vanderbilt win and go to the tournament. Like that's cool and a rarity, I think, in this day and age.
All right. I want to talk about, how they've been doing this, because, they beat Kentucky and Tennessee at home. And then you also beat Ole Miss and Texas at home, teams like that. But you also go on the road and win in College Station over Texas A&M. And then you come back and get a huge win over Missouri. Like, nationally, how is this being perceived? I know, you guys field the 68. I think you have Vandy as a 9 right now on field of 68. I know Lenardi has them as a 9, Jerry Palm a little bit higher as an 8. How nationally is this being perceived? And do you think Vanderbilt, because we've got a lot of questions about the seed ceiling. I said 7, but now with the Arkansas loss, probably going to be a little bit harder to get there. But how do you look at Vanderbilt and their potential NCAA tournament seeding right now?
Yeah, look, I think that 7 to 10 range probably feels most likely, and I would guess on the higher end of that after what they've done here lately. Obviously, it'd be nice to finish it off with a road win, another quad 1 win at Georgia on Saturday. Look, I think for much of the year there was always this feeling of like, all right, when's the other shoe going to drop, right? Like, when's that catastrophic losing streak going to come that derails the chances? And it never has, and that's an incredible credit to the staff, incredible credit to the players. I think it's a illustration of the talent level too. Like, I think people probably overlook, like, they have really good players. You mentioned Jason Edwards, like, he's one of the best bucket getters in college basketball, and that's a pretty good place to start. The shooting around him has been good. So yeah, like, I think especially in this year where I feel like Auburn, Duke, and potentially Houston all feel sort of above the fray a little bit, you'd love to stay out of the 8-9 game. And so maybe that's climbing to the 7, maybe that's winding up dropping a little bit to the 10. The matchups are not fun necessarily once you get into that range, but at the same time, like, I think Vandy's proven they can beat high level teams, and your hope would be that once you get in there, the hope would be once you get in there, you can make some noise.
We've talked a lot about the seeding, and I know a lot of this could be useless talking about this right now, but everybody loves to. I've had a lot of conversations about which 1 seed Vanderbilt fans would want to be paired with. And as of right now, you've got Auburn pretty unanimously as the number 1 overall seed, and then Duke, Tennessee, and Houston. Obviously, Florida is right there too as potential 1. Alabama is right there as well. But those 4 likely going to be your 1 seeds. Would you agree with me that Houston is the team that if you're Vanderbilt, you'd like to be paired with, as opposed to Auburn or Duke? I don't think anybody wants to be paired with Auburn or Duke, but honestly, Houston and Tennessee, if Vanderbilt gets in the 8-9, Kevin, I would feel fine about their chance. I wouldn't necessarily maybe pick them to win, but I wouldn't be sitting here saying, oh, they have no shot.
Yeah, look, I think the one thing in a Houston matchup is, so much of their team is built on forcing turnovers, and Vanderbilt's done a great job of taking care of the basketball. I think the size would be a problem. Houston is just so tenacious in the glass that I would be worried about that. I mean, they're just a hard team to play against in general. But yeah, I mean, again, we're talking least bad options here. I think, yes, you would rather be on, if you're essentially viewing the top of the bracket being Auburn on one side and Duke on the other, you'd rather be on the bottom and try your hand with the last SEC team in the second round, or, as you mentioned, Houston probably be there in that mix as well. So, yeah, I think that's probably the ideal. Obviously, if you can get down to the 2, maybe you have a little bit more flexibility, or you just get like less of an elite team. But what the path is to that point, I think will be challenging, partially because there's just been recently there's been a lot of really good teams that have decent resumes have started to slip down to the 6 or the 7, the Illinois, the Kansases of the world. It just gets tricky really fast when you're dealing with, a Kansas team that has a win over Duke, trying to seed them over, try to not get seeded over Vanderbilt. That's a challenging point you run into. So I think it's gonna be hard to climb too much, but obviously you could dream about a 7.
Yeah, and for Vanderbilt fans, it's not going to be hard to move back potentially if to a 10. For example, if you do, if that is what more fans want. I want to ask you too this year with the SEC tournament, it hasn't really mattered in the past to the committee, right? And really in general, congratulations, you got an SEC tournament title, but it really hasn't mattered in terms of momentum either. Auburn won it last year and then lost to Yale in the first round, while Alabama went to the Final Four after dropping out in the first round of the SEC tournament. So there's really not a ton of correlation to, staying hot. It just, the tournament can be such a crapshoot in March. Do you think this is a season that the SEC tournament will matter more to the committee? Because number one, it's probably the best conference ever in college basketball. And number two, you'll have matchups like that, and you have teams fighting for 1 seeds like Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. You have bubble teams fighting over each other. Do you think it could matter for once to the committee this year? And even for a team like Vandy, if they make a run in the SEC tournament?
Yeah, I wish I could say I feel really good that the committee will. I think it should. I think the problem is that, unfortunately, it's a very long process to put the bracket together, and I think the committee tries to get their work done early as much as they can. So look, I think the value will be early for some of these bubble teams, right? Right now, that'd be Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, maybe Georgia, but I think Georgia's safe at this point for the most part. What do those teams do early? Do we get a matchup between them early? How does that, sort out, maybe last 4 in, first 4 out type situation? And then you mentioned, potentially the 1 seed thing. There's an opportunity if you're a Florida, you're Bama, you're Tennessee to get 3 quad 1 wins in this week, and the fact that shouldn't change your seeding is crazy, right? So I think those would be the 2 areas you would watch. I'm not sure that the Vandys or the Kentuckys or the Ole Misses, the teams that are safely in but not on not a serious 1 consideration, are going to change their outlook that drastically. But obviously you want to be playing good basketball again. Whether the momentum has mattered before or not, I think in general, there's risk of beating yourself up a little bit, but I think for the most part, you'd rather be feeling good about yourself, and a couple wins in Nashville could go a long way towards doing just that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Georgia team. They last night got a big win over South Carolina, and I say big win, maybe not the most impressive win, but South Carolina has been a dangerous team here as of late, and Georgia is Vanderbilt's next opponent in Athens. And we really haven't, I don't know a ton about this Georgia team. They've obviously brought in some transfers. Silas Demery's been big for them, obviously. Asa Newell, Blue Kane has been huge. They brought Tyron Lawrence over from Vanderbilt, who we know about, and then R.J. Godfrey from Clemson. Ahead of this matchup, tell us a little bit about this Georgia team. And you said they're somewhat safely in, which maybe Vanderbilt doesn't get as desperate of a Georgia team. It's probably still be a really desperate Georgia team that will want to win this game. But what are you expecting in this matchup on Saturday?
Yeah, they've positioned themselves well. They're now top 35 in both resume and quality metrics. They have 2 elite wins, 1 on a neutral against St. John's in November, 1 in February here, a couple weeks ago against Florida, monster victory. So, they've positioned themselves well. I think the big difference is Demery, who you mentioned. He was just okay, I think, and that really held them back early in SEC play. They have great size and athleticism up front. Newell's a first-round pick, but beyond him, Godfrey and Santos Cyril and Dylan James, I thought was excellent yesterday. Their 5th big is Justin Abson, who was the defensive player of the year in the Sun Belt last year. It's a really good player. And I would be playing significant minutes for Vanderbilt just because of their front court, disparity. That's what Georgia has. And I think that matchup is probably the most interesting thing. But, Georgia was held back early in the year by their guards. And lately, Silas Demery has been phenomenal. 7 straight games with 16 plus points, had 16, 8, and 4 yesterday with no turnovers. They're a different team when he's playing at that level on the ball. And I think they're a team that has a real chance to make a little bit of noise in the NCAA tournament now that they're somewhat safely in the field, because the matchup's just challenging when you're playing a team that has one really good guard and a ton of size. The other thing I would probably point out with this Georgia group is Ken Pom says they've played the hardest schedule in the SEC because they had to play 2 against Auburn and 2 against Florida, which is just unbelievably bad luck. So obviously 7-10 in the league. I know a lot of people may turn their nose up at that, but different world when you're playing that, when you had 4 games against those 2 on your schedule.
Well, another team that's 7-10 in the league right now is the Arkansas team that Vanderbilt faced last night. And I just got to ask you, how is that Arkansas team only 7-10 right now? I sent this to our board last night, just watching them last night. And I know, look, timing matters, right? They absolutely had to have that win last night. And, Vanderbilt's coming off 3 straight huge wins, and Vanderbilt was due for a letdown here. But man, that Arkansas Trevon Brazile was unbelievable. Like, how are they 7-10?
Yeah, I mean, look, they've dealt with injuries. 2 guys who weren't out there yesterday, and Adu Thiero, who's probably their best player, and then Boogie Fland, who is maybe their best scorer. Both of those guys have been in and out. Thiero been out the last, I think, 3 or 4 games now. Look, they got punked by South Carolina in the front court. Nick Pringle and Colin Murray Boyles just took it to them. And I think Arkansas took that personally. And Trevon Brazile played the best game he has played in multiple seasons. I mean, this is a guy who at one point was sort of talked about as an NBA prospect, a potential first-round talent. It has not gone that way the last couple of years. Part of that's injuries. But he played like a man possessed and, dominated the game up front. It helped that, John L. Davis and DJ Wagner played 2 of their better games of the season. They just had everything going, and I give them a lot of credit. Again, that was a game they had to have, and they came out with the right mentality and rolled. At times I've watched them like, how have they won 17, 18 basketball games in a bad way? Like, how have they done that? Yeah. They're not very good. And then other times you watch them like, man, the consistency just hasn't been there. But that was a big step towards punching their ticket last night, no question.
All right, last thing here before I let you go. The SEC, as I just mentioned earlier, one of the better conferences ever, maybe the best conference ever. Obviously, Auburn at the top. You've got some other potential 1 seeds like Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee. Vanderbilt right now, I think, is not locked into the 10 seed in the SEC tournament, but that's likely where they'll be, unless, depending on what happens on Saturday. Just run through the SEC from your perspective for me. I know there's a lot of good teams, but where does Vanderbilt stand? I know standings, we know where they stand, but in terms of, man, this team can really do some things in March. Where does Vanderbilt stand among those SEC teams?
If you were to build sort of a tier list, I would have Auburn in a tier of its own at 1. I would have Florida and Bama in a tier in second tier in terms of March ability. I think Tennessee would belong in that in terms of what they've accomplished. But I think in March, the way they play is probably a little less apt to a deep run. Tennessee, Mizzou, A&M, I think would be tier 3. Kentucky, if they were healthy, I would say was in that group right now, maybe a little bit down. And then I think Vanderbilt probably in the group with Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Vandy. So I'll give Kentucky their own tier and then go, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Vandy, and Georgia, all teams that I think have proven at times they can beat high level competition. Teams that I don't know have been consistent enough or have, roster flaws that you'll limit them from being a team that you're like, man, like that team is really primed to make a deep run. But, really solid, respectable years that in a lot of conferences might have either won you a league or came darn close.
Yeah, it's ridiculous what this league has been this year. Looking forward to the SEC tournament. Kevin, really appreciate it. Good insight there nationally, but also throughout the SEC. Looking forward to the rest of your coverage. Good luck this week, and appreciate the visit.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy March.
All right, you too, Kevin. That's Kevin Sweeney from Sports Illustrated. Also, the Field of 68 does a really good job writing there at Sports Illustrated and doing some podcast work there too at Field of 68. So big time visit there from Kevin. Also, the baseball team in action today at 4:30 against St. Bonaventure after yesterday's game was canceled. The impending weather was not going to let that game happen against Evansville yesterday. So Vandy will host St. Bonaventure, though, today at 4:30 at Hawkins Field. So looking forward to that. Vandy boys looking to get back on track. Also, the basketball team, of course, in action in Athens, Georgia, against the Bulldogs, a desperate Georgia team as well. It's going to be really tough, really talented Georgia team that Vanderbilt's going to have to play. That'll be at 11 a.m. on the SEC Network. Really appreciate the visit from Kevin Sweeney here on the podcast. The podcast has always been free. We plan for it to stay that way. Give us a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you haven't subscribed to Vandy247.com yet, please do. We've got a special deal right now that you do not want to miss. Limited time $1 VIP membership. $1 VIP membership. Sign up today. You can get daily insights on the latest scoop on all things Vanderbilt. So it's the go-to place for Commodore Sports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, comment, and if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy